Was this idea of doing a pause, did that just come about this morning? Can you tell us exactly what came into consideration for you and your advisors?
For a period of time, I wouldn't say this morning. Over the last few days, I've been thinking about it. I've been dealing with Scott, with Howard, with some other people that are very professional. And I think it probably came together early this morning, fairly early this morning. Just wrote it up. We didn't have the use of... we didn't have access to lawyers, or we just wrote it up from our hearts, right?
Donald Trump there retreating from most of his tariff posture today, pausing almost all the reciprocal tariffs he announced exactly a week ago on his self-titled Liberation Day, but hitting China even harder, raising tariffs on that country to 125%. That's right, 125%. So how does this latest trade war swing potentially impact the Canadian election campaign? Let's talk about that with our front bench. Sharon Carr is the former Deputy Chief of Staff to former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. She's now a partner at Sovereign Advisory in advising the Liberal campaign. Jamie Ellerton is a Conservative strategist and the founder and principal of Canada-U.S. Kathleen Monk is the former Director of Communications to the late Jack Layton. She's now the principal owner of Monk & Associates. And Hannah Thibodeau rounds us out. She's a former news anchor, now an Executive Communications Officer at Global Public Affairs. Hi, everybody. Hey there. Speaking of whiplash, Jamie, I'm going to start with you because before we get started, the most important part of our discussion tonight is a sincere happy birthday to your wonderful dad, Clifford Ellerton. Yay. Am I right?
Clifford Ellerton, 68 years young, as he would say, a young 68. So happy birthday to my father.
Happy birthday, yeah. Happy birthday to your dad. And happy opposite of Liberation Day to the rest of us, I guess. Like, walk us through, I guess, the degree to which this isn't about face. As recently as yesterday, the White House was saying, no way does Trump back down from this. Ultimately, I know it's hard to know for sure, but what do you think made him bend?
I think it's just the constant tanking of the markets and everyone who has any money invested, whether it's in the stock market or in the economy through their businesses, not being able to operate in the aura of uncertainty that he has created. The wealth destruction these tariffs have engaged in is absolutely astonishing, and I don't think we've seen the markets swing so wildly in our lifetimes or history. Nothing comes to my mind, at least. I think when you look at this from a kind of a campaign context, it's hard for the campaigns to get their own message out and be talking about what they want to be talking about when the literal swings of the entire global economy going up and down as a result of what President Trump is doing. And if you take President Trump at his own words, it sounds like today he caved and became a panic can because you had to stay strong, otherwise you were whatever he called them. And he's now gone ahead and done just that. So it's another day trying to keep up with whatever that's going through that man's mind.
I'm not sure if you know this, but apparently this was the strategy all along. This is how the negotiation was supposed to take place. 75 countries have called. And by the way, NBC reached out to find out, Kathleen, who those 75 countries are. No response provided. As far as how this is impacting the campaign, to Jamie's point, it's so reactive as a result, right? So this, every Wednesday, it appears there's a new news cycle that begins with Donald Trump and enforces the campaigns to respond. How has that played out in your view? And how
well, it's fascinating because just a couple days ago, we were talking about maybe Trump is actually going to retreat from the campaign. Maybe we actually won't be talking about tariffs for the last back half of the campaign. Well, that changed today, because instead of having a spine of steel, which is what the White House press secretary described Trump's spine as, it's actually more like wet spaghetti, I guess, because after seeing the markets for the last few days.
On tariff steel, perhaps.
Yeah, on tariff steel, exactly. But it is remarkable. But I mean, I think the bigger picture that I want to say is this is what happens when you let billionaires buy off the White House, right? Who have deep pockets, who have dark agendas. And this is what they do. They throw the market into chaos. I mean, just to make this point, last week, the markets were in such chaos that they almost triggered these circuit breaker-like things that actually automatically stop the market for trading for 15 minutes because they're having such wild swings. And that is really dangerous. And I pick up on the point that Amanda Lang made to you earlier, Vashi, that if in fact this was Trump's plan all along, which the White House press secretary implied in her comments today. She says, have you not read The Art of the Deal? This is how it was all going to play out with countries coming crawling back to Trump. My point is, if he was aware of this and he caused this chaos intentionally, that is not only corrupt, it's illegal, it's immoral, he's led people to lose loss, and actually some Democrat legislator in the state should find out a way to actually investigate this, and hopefully there'll be consequences for the president. presidency.
As we look ahead, just listening to both Jamie and Kathleen's points, Sharon, to the debates, for example, taking place and the significance of them, will there be an ability to focus on issues outside of this? I know it's, I think Liberals by and large believe it's okay if they don't, because that issue set is working for them. But do you expect there to be kind of a forced other issue set put forward through the debate?
I think in a normal world, I think everyone would hope so, because we do want to talk about things that are domestically relevant. But right now, the overcast that we have is Donald Trump, and we thought maybe he would have chilled out with his Liberation Day after we saw this insanity happen. But I still think the debates are going to be heavily focused on Donald Trump. And listen, as a Liberal, it's not a horrible thing for us, mainly because we have seen how Mark Carney has been able to handle him. We have seen how Mark Carney has been able to kind of take the tone and tenor down. But listen, I'm kind of with Kathleen and Jamie, and I think all of us are probably in the same position. If they're saying, the White House is saying these were the plans all along, I'm sorry, watching the stock market tank the way it's been tanking, no one should have wanted that. This is actual consequential things that are happening, not only to Canadians, to people globally. So while we want to sit here and have debates domestically during a federal election about things that matter in different parts of the country, we're going to be heavily fixated on how do we stop this. This is 4 years, and if it's up to him, probably more than 4 years of this insanity. But let's say we want to talk about affordability in Canada. Everything that we want to talk about domestically is, in fact, going to be impacted by what Trump is doing. So it's kind of a mishmash of what we can say, but I think it will be heavily dominated by Trump, to be honest.
How much do you think the next 2.5 weeks, Hannah, in your crystal ball, will be about this?
About Donald Trump, I think it's still going to remain about Donald Trump. I'll tell you where I am right now. I'm in Iqaluit at the Nunavut Mining Symposium. And when this happened earlier today, this is a part of the discussion. And how is this part of a discussion at the symposium here? Well, think of it this way. They say this as a very volatile president. And there are two very important issues here in the North and in the Arctic. And those two issues are critical minerals as well as sovereignty. I was talking to David Agiakok. He is the uncle of the premier here. They're from Grise Fjord. That is the most northern point inhabited in the Arctic and that's where his family's from. They were put there by the government to be the flag for Canadian sovereignty. Those humans were put there because of that. What he says is sovereignty is never more important for the Inuit here than it has been in his generation. So that is important for them. When it comes to critical minerals, they know that they want to be in charge of these critical minerals because Donald Trump has said in the past he would like to have more American influence on the Arctic, and they don't want to see that. Former Senator Dennis Patterson was on the stage today, and he is saying that the Arctic has the attention now, and they need to keep that attention on them, especially with this volatile president. And clearly, whoever becomes the next prime minister is interested in what happens here, because in the past 36 days, all of those leaders have shown up here to try to get their voices heard and make sure that this is something that they pay attention to. So they're saying, grab hold of that attention. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to the Arctic, and they want to ensure that they are the ones leading that conversation, not someone from the United States.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Our front bench, Sharon Carr, Jamie Ellerton, Kathleen Monk, and Hannah Thibodeau.